Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 90.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. Before I talk about our episode today, I want to share with you two important things. Just make sure you heard these on previous episodes. Number one, if you'd like to come on the show and have us go through essentially your practice and talk about some of your challenges and areas that you'd like to improve, we're bringing people on the show now. So it's something that we're excited to do. And it's simple. Just send me an email, jamie@lifebydesign.com. I'll ask you a bunch of questions about your practice and what you'd like to accomplish, and we'll jump on the air and we'll record something. Number two, looking for our next associate contractor to be in the Extraordinary Life Chiropractic practice here at the Life by Design Center. So if that's you, I'm looking for a Canadian doctor who can come and train with us and be a part and help grow our practice here, essentially grow your practice, as we're at full capacity for my practice, and I'm looking for people to take on our new cases and grow your own practice within ours. So I think it's something that is a great fit for a lot of people out there. Then just, again, send me a message, jamie@lifebydesign.com, and I'll send you the information. Today's episode, we bring on Dr. Shawna Dingman. Shawna is a good friend of ours and a Life by Design Elite doc, and she has really created something that I think is worth listening for anybody. And it doesn't matter whether you're a female or you're looking to be in quote-unquote part-time practice. I think this boutique style of practice can really work and be highly profitable, can be very low stress, and can really create a ton of opportunity for your life, depending on what some of your other dreams are and some of your other goals are. So I think you're going to get a ton out of this episode, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Dr. Shawna Dingman. Shawna, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, Shawna, this is something I've been very excited about. I'll give a little bit of background to our listeners. Shawna is not just a good friend of mine. She's also one of our Life by Design Elite doctors and has been for some time. And we were chatting at a recent Life by Design training camp, and Shawna was just kind of going into this new business model that she's been operating, the new way that she's been practicing, and how successful it's been for her, not just in terms of, numbers and profits, which are great, but also how it's really, fueled your happiness. And for those of us who know where you are today, say, compared to some of the challenges you faced and kind of the journey, I think that there's just going to be a lot of value here. And it doesn't matter whether you're a man, a woman, I know that you're going to get a ton out of this. So Shawna, if you can go way back in time, not that far back, right, Shawna?
Careful.
If you can go back in time and just tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, where you were in chiropractic and where you got to that essentially was kind of the start of all of this change.
Sure. Yeah. So I graduated from chiropractic college from CMCC in 2000. So I've been a chiropractor for 19 years. I met my husband, Craig, in chiropractic college. And I would say probably the most pivotal thing that happened for me around graduation and starting practice was we actually had our first child in fourth year. And so when I graduated from chiropractic college, I had not a newborn baby, but still, a less than 1-year-old baby. So going into practice, I already knew that I needed to balance everything that was going on in my life as a mom and, as a partner to Craig with the needs of growing a first practice. I started out as a maternity locum. So I did a maternity locum for a chiropractor in Aurora, which is where Craig and I had decided we kind of wanted to land. And, I did the locum. We ended up going into partnership. It turned out to be not a great fit as far as a partnership was concerned. So about 2 years into practice, we dissolved the partnership. And that's when I decided to start my own practice. Everything happened really quickly. And Craig had actually, before we decided to dissolve the partnership, me and this other chiropractor, Craig had opened up a clinic in Aurora with a partner of his just down the street from the place that I ended up leasing. So For a while we were sort of 4 blocks apart, and we both had these wellness centers. I had to have a place really, really quickly. And so I leased this space that was way bigger than I needed, and I just filled it with practitioners. So I had a multidisciplinary practice with probably 6 or 7 other practitioners. Wow. That would be my second and into my third year of practice. And at that time, we still just had, we had Jackson, but we were thinking about starting a larger family and having another child. So I had a lot of balls in the air, and I loved it, but at the same time, I felt overwhelmed probably most of the time, just trying to handle everything that was going on with team and with procedures and just paying bills, and then the usual demands of motherhood. And it was great. We ended up, the building that I was leasing was going to be put up for sale. And so the owner actually came to us first and said, do you want to buy the building? So we decided to buy the building, which was probably one of the best decisions financially we ever made as far as practice was concerned. Because we were now owners of this building, Craig ended his partnership and literally just moved his practice into my building. And so Craig and I began as partners when I was, this would be 4 years into practice now. Our son would have been almost 5, I guess. I was pregnant with our second at that time. And we literally doubled the size of our practice overnight, team, just everything, and had to sort of navigate how the two of us were going to co-manage or co-own this practice together, as well as, I was approaching the end of my pregnancy. Right. And it was interesting. It was a very, very interesting time. So I went off on mat leave, and really I didn't have any mat leave with our first. I had Jackson the week of final exams in third year.
Oh my goodness.
And so I had that week off in between third and fourth year. And then I was back in my seat 8 a.m. Monday morning with a newborn baby, nursing and everything at the beginning of fourth year. So that was fourth year for me, was literally trying to do as much as we possibly could with this little baby in tow and recovering from having a baby. I mean, I remember in September, so 3 weeks after we had Jackson, we had our clinic exam. Oh. I remember being in there and my milk let down in the middle of the exam. My lab coat was soaked through. I was literally dripping. And I had all these male examiners, and they were trying not to look, but it was... It was crazy. So that was mat leave for me, was literally a week off to sort of figure out how to be a mom, and then go into fourth year with boards and everything else. So I was really excited to be able to have a mat leave. That was one of the great, great benefits of Craig and I being in partnership now together, was that I could actually take as long a mat leave as I wanted to take with our daughter, Jenna. And it was incredible. So I told all my patients I'd be back in 3 months, and then I came back about 11 months later.
Right. Right.
So that was interesting because, I thought that all of my patients would just come back to me. We had just transferred their care over to Craig, and I would show up every now and then in practice, but really I was not there all that much. I really, really enjoyed my time with my kids at home. And so when I came back into practice, I was shocked to see that, because my hours were very limited, I really came back into it kind of dipping my toe. A lot of people, they were happy with their hours with Craig. They were certainly happy with the care. They were still part of our clinic family. Right. And so it was literally almost like starting practice over again. So I did that, and Craig and I just continued to really have a lot of conflict as far as how we were running the practice together. There were, 2 captains in one ship, and it seems to me, looking back, it was just nothing but strife in that year. And so we just decided at that point that probably for our marriage and for everyone involved, it was better for me to just take some time off and stay home and be mom. We decided to have another baby. So, we had a third child in and around all that, another mat leave. And about 18 months after our third, I decided to go back into practice, but I was so afraid of what it would do to our relationship, to my marriage with Craig, that I really just wanted the experience of being able to show up at practice, do my job, unlock the door, do my job, lock the door, and not have to worry about who was going to be plowing the driveway or what happened if the garbage didn't get picked up or if there was a plumbing backup or whatever. So I really had this wonderful opportunity to go into practice as an associate with Dr. Ryan French in Bolton. He was a classmate of ours. He was a good friend. And it was just a fantastic arrangement. It was a wonderful associateship. He was a wonderful mentor. It was great. And then after a certain amount of time, it just made sense for me to go back to our practice, to end the associateship and to really go back and figure this whole practice thing out with Craig. And, financially, it made sense for the size that my practice was at in Bolton. It made sense for me to be back in my own practice again in Aurora. So we did that, and it was challenging again. I just felt like it wasn't just a personal thing. It was the style of practice. It was just how I was doing everything in practice. I loved it. And yet at the same time, when you have a jacket that it kind of fits, but it doesn't feel like a good fit, and then it just kind of nags at you. And I just felt like it was never quite the right fit. Then we made a move out to the country. So we moved like almost an hour away from our practice. And we both continued to commute for about a year. And it was too far for both of us to be away from where our kids were, all three of them at that point in school. It just wasn't feasible for both of us to be that far away. So again, we made the decision for me to stay home, and I was home for 5 years with the kids. And then it just really got to the point where we were in a different phase of life with the kids. I could go back into practice again, but I knew I didn't want to go back into practice in Aurora. Not because I didn't want to go back into practice with Craig, but that whole practice had changed dramatically. We had another chiropractor who was now working really, really nicely with Craig. They have this awesome, great professional relationship. It works really well. And I knew that if I went back into it, not only would, there'd be two parents again at too far a distance with the kids, but I didn't want to muck up the dynamic that Craig and this other chiropractor had. So I just, it was like when you're only used to working in one box, it's hard to get outside the box and see how can I do this in a way that's outside the box. And, we really just got to a point where we felt like I need to be back in practice again. And then all of a sudden the whole answer just kind of came to me, and it was just don't do things the way you've ever done them before. And that's really how I came to be in where I'm at now and how I'm doing things. And I still feel like I'm stumbling through it every day. Every week seems to be kind of a new tweak and a new thing to fix, but it's awesome. And it's really cool to be doing something that just really fits our lifestyle.
I'm excited to talk about what that is. And I know people who are listening are excited to listen to you talk about what that is, but I want to take a step back before we get there so they can understand, some of the emotions and the mindset that have gone along with making this transition, because I'm sure, knowing your background and you guys had a great high volume practice, and you had all these really good things. And of course there was some things that were not so good that were a part of that practice. Did you go through a struggle when you thought, okay, now I need to create the new model for myself? Did you go through a struggle with, but that's not how it's done. I have to see all these people, or I have to do it this way. What was the thought process for you, and how did you get over that hurdle and just eventually go for it?
Well, I think looking back, I had only ever been shown one way of doing it because the only people I'd ever been mentored by were men. Mm-hmm. And not to take anything away from the coaches or mentors I've had amazing coaches, you being one of them. But, I think especially when you've got two chiropractors in the family, the rules don't all apply to both people. Mm-hmm. I remember when there was a point where in our practice, we were seeing between us probably, I think we really topped out just over 400 a week. And, for that many people and new patients, for both of us to be doing group reports every week, and for both of us to be doing group reports for, reconversion reports and things like that, it was like, if we're both doing this, when are we ever at home together with our family? And so whenever I would ask those questions, it was just kind of, well, I don't know, you just have to figure that out. And so I think that was the challenge that I always had, was that I struggled to find the solution for how does it work for me as the mom, as the wife, but also as a chiropractor. And so I think that's where it was that sense of, I don't seem to fit in the box. Or maybe really it was like Craig and I as a couple, as a chiropractic couple, wanting to have time with our kids and time together. We don't seem to fit in this box. Mm-hmm. So, when we started coaching with you, Jamie, I would say that even though at that point I was still 2 years away from opening this practice that I'm in now, it started the whole thought about looking at practice from a whole different perspective. And really, it's a business perspective.
Right.
I think it's so sad that in chiropractic college, we're really trained to talk about the wrong numbers. How many new patients you see in a month or how many patient visits you're doing in a week. And it's irrelevant if you're not making any money. And when we started with Life by Design, it seems so ridiculous that we had never truly really thought in terms of profit. But that was the big shift, was really looking at what is your income per visit and what is your cost per visit. And as you know, when Craig and I started and we actually looked at those numbers, it was frightening. It was mind-boggling how we had missed such an important concept, the concept of profit. And then I started podcasting, not specifically to chiropractors, but I was looking for something else, and I really started studying online business, and I wanted to be able to help other women entrepreneurs with this idea of balance. I had really felt like, there was such a struggle, and especially with entrepreneurs, as women, we don't put things in balance very well. So I started podcasting about that. And then it morphed into a podcast for women chiropractors who wanted to have a pediatric and pregnancy focused practice, because really that's always been my focus in practice. And it's always been very easy for me to build, a really high pediatric, volume practice in a short period of time. So I started podcasting to what I knew. And then, it just morphed into, a whole other podcast and some one-on-one coaching. And so because my mind was constantly in that idea of working from a good business model and how do you create things that are profitable, but how do you also honor your own values as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, I talked about it so much with so many people and so many other women chiropractors over probably a year's time that the ideas were just all there. And I think it was just waiting for me to wake up one day and for me to know in my head, you don't have to do it this way. And so once I realized I don't have to go back to practice in Aurora, I can do something totally different. What is the minimum viable product that I need? Well, I need my hands. I need a chiropractic table. And a laptop would be great, but not absolutely necessary. Once I got that through my head, that all I truly need is some kind of a space, a table, and my hands, I could open up a practice. And so that's what started it. And from the time I had that thought to the time I opened, it was 3 weeks. Wow. So I didn't open with, I don't even know if I had a website the day that I opened. I think I just had a Facebook page. I didn't have any bells and whistles. I literally just had a space in my house. We moved our dining room table downstairs, and we have a fairly spacious great room when you first come in our house. So there was lots of room to do consultations and have people waiting and do the adjustments literally right in the great room outside of our kitchen. And so that's how I started practice. And then it almost became, it was like a challenge for me. How can I do this with as little expense as possible? And charge as much as I possibly feel that I can say to people and know that I feel like I'm in value with them, and keep as much of it in my account. And that's really how it started. So I started with, my expenses were they would have been my license fees and my malpractice fees. Right. Those were the only expenses I had when I first started. And
that's such an important question, Shawna. I don't think, we get out of school or we start to progress or we leave an associate position and we just, I'm guilty for this for sure. And you dream up this vision that's, as big as you can imagine. And that's what we're taught to do, right? We're taught to dream up the vision as big as possible, but we're not necessarily taught or asked to dream up our vision, particularly. It's just how big can you dream? Shoot for the stars. And I think that's great. We've talked a lot about in the Elite Doc program, the Dream Life Project. You know, what is your life that you would like to have? And then what does it cost to have that life? And when you start to reverse engineer that, I know for me, when I did it, I'm sure for you, a lot of the clients, the big takeaway for me was I need to generate a lot less revenue than I would have thought. If you would have just said, all right, Jamie, how much do you need to make to have the dream life? I would have come up with a number. But when we actually crunch the numbers, you know, it's probably 50% of what I would have just given at the top of my head. And then you go, wow, my per visit collection is 40, 50, 55. Divided into that number, and you say, wow, I mean, I only need to see, 70 visits a week. Well, I could do that in a day or 2 days in a little space and have the dream life. And all of a sudden you've got this dream life, all the profit you want, and you still have 5 days of the week to do all the other things you love. And by the sounds of it and what we've chatted about, that's kind of the conclusion you came to. So tell us about how you started to actually, I think the hard part for me, and maybe that you can help me with this, because I would envision being in the space and, wanting to have all of the stuff, right? The EMG and the thermal and the structural radiographs and having the beautiful building. How did you temper that and stay true to what you were trying to create?
I think 18 years at that point of struggling to pay bills and things like that. And it wasn't always a struggle for sure. But I think because I've had it and I understand the expense that goes along with it, and everything has a price, right? You can have the beautiful office with all the bells and whistles, and you can see lots of people and have the team. And there are such benefits to that. I mean, there are days where I would love to have a chiropractic assistant right now. But the flip side is that there are days where you shake your head and go, why am I doing this? There are days where it just seems more trouble than it's worth.
Right.
And I think because I've had everything in between, I've had the big, beautiful office with all the equipment, x-ray machine, all that stuff. And, and I've had, what I have now, which is about as bare bones as you can possibly get. I guess it's easy for me to temper that because I know what both ends feel like. And I think what I try to do on any given day is balance what do I want most right now with where I'm at. Right. And it's not to say that I don't ever want to have that again. Perhaps I do, but I'm really at a stage where one of the things I love about the practice that I have is that I don't have anybody else to manage. And coming from having a practice where there were multiple chiropractic assistants and multiple practitioners and, team of coming up on 10, 12 people, I think there's just a big part of me that right now at this stage of my life, that's the last thing I want. I just want to worry about me right now. I want to know that if I decide to change something, change a procedure, change anything I want, change my price, change whatever, I have no one to train, no one to be accountable to. I have no HR issues. And right now, that's what I need with where our family's at. And I think what I love about this model. So, what you were talking about is essentially reverse engineering. So what I thought was, okay, well, how much would I love to make? So I had a number in my head. And then I looked at, okay, how much do I need to profit per visit, and how many visits would I need to do in order to do that? And in my head, I thought, I think I can probably manage 50 visits a week with absolutely no staff, no help, no anything.
Right.
And if I have revenue of 50, my income is $50 a visit. And I keep my expenses below, say, 25%.
That's great.
Then not only should I be able to have, 100,000 plus practice, but most of that I should be able to bring home. And so that was the process for me, was if I want to have $100,000 practice, and I understand for a lot of listeners, that's a very tiny practice. And, our practice in Aurora is, it's multiple six figures, but at the same time, the expenses go up and up and up. So it wasn't just the revenue, it's the profit. How much profit do I want to bring home? So, and that was all part of it. And can I do that with team? Probably not. I would have to jump to a whole different level. So for me, it's been, how do I create that practice with that income, with those expenses, and how close can I get to that?
Right. Well, Shawna, just
it's almost like a game now.
Well, even you saying these numbers, right? I just think about somebody listening in. Again, it doesn't matter if you're a mom, a female, male. This is really about what you want. I love that you said, what do I want right now? Right? Because you said, can change. And it may change, it may not change. You might scale up and still have no staff as you become more efficient at 50 visits per week and so on, and become more profitable.
Yeah.
I think about, as a couple, Craig is in practice, has an income, but let's say you were anybody and you said, all right, here you go. You're going to work 2 days a week and I'm going to give you $100,000 take home income. That's a pretty sweet gig, right? That's a pretty successful, Shawna, that's an ultra successful model that anybody could mimic, because really when you crunch the numbers at a 25% overhead and a 75% profit, you're talking at 50 visits a week over the course of the year, $97,500.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty darn great. And you think about this model for a new grad and how empowering this could be, Shawna, for a new graduate coming out with all of this, practice debt. And you even think about it where you're coming out, you're looking for an IC, or they want to be an associate. You're never going to make that as an IC in year 1, 2, or 3. You're never going to make that as an associate. But to think that you could, most people coming out of school, even doing a terrible job, could probably get to 50 visits a week out of their kitchen. You know what I mean? Most likely, not saying it's ideal, but you probably could do it.
Yeah, you can, for sure. I didn't like having the practice in my house. So, I really felt like I was dipping my toe in from April to October just to see, is this even going to take? Is it going to work? And then in October 1st, I moved my practice into Port Perry. So again, I just found a really super cheap space. That was exactly what I needed. Still, the expenses are still really low. And that allowed me to really multiply a lot quicker. So, but you're right. And I think for women, this is such an important question to ask, because when we're in chiropractic college, we have no idea what it's going to be like to be a mom after. Right. And I get not everybody wants to be a mom, but most women statistically are going to have kids within 10 years after graduating from chiropractic college. And it's a whole different ballgame. And it's not something that you can teach someone. You can start to get them asking questions, but you just have no idea the challenges that motherhood is going to bring into it. And that's why I love this idea of, what is the minimum viable product that you can start with? Let's start with a vision of how much do you want to make, and then reverse engineer that. How can we do it with reasonable hours and with the right automations, the right delegation, and the right support in order to get you there as quickly as possible? So for me, I work 10 patient hours a week, which means for me, so, I think there's this formula that whatever the number of patient hours you have, for most people, you're going to have a similar number of admin hours.
Right.
So for me, 10 patient hours means 20 hours altogether. So that's 10 and 10 admin hours. And it seems to work out about that way. I've had to get really, really good about recognizing where the gaps are, where I'm allowing people to fall through, because I'm not used to being a chiropractic assistant. I'm used to delegating all that stuff, and now I have to do it myself. So I try to create systems in my practice to circumvent my own disabilities as far as being a chiropractic assistant. So, where I see people falling through, I have to kind of get around my own self and figure out how can I automate that so that the process becomes just part of the system, part of the software, something that I can't mess up myself. And that's been a big part of the learning process too. But 2 afternoons and 2 afternoons and 2 mornings a week. And the rest of the time that I have, I can do coaching, or I can have me time. I can spend time with my kids. I can be there for all the things in life that I want to be in. And if I want to expand my hours, if I don't want to do 50, say I decide, okay, I'm at 50, I want to do 75. I can just add in a shift.
Right. Yeah, it's easily scalable, right? Yeah. And again, with the profit margin built in, I think this is one of the big take-home points. At a 75% profit margin, scaling is wonderful. When you have a razor thin margin of, 10% or 20 or 25% even because of your size, scaling is a lot of work to really not create a lot more profit. And, just listening to you tell the story of all this, part of me is thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so jealous. I'm going to sell everything and we're going to go back to the little shop across the road. But I really do think this is such an amazing model. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the show, because I think you're doing it very, very, very well. You're doing it in a very classy and professional way. And I think you've got a great brand. So the question I want to ask you, and I'll leave us, all the listeners with this, because I think this is probably a big take home. You've nailed on a lot of benefits to this model, and people have probably learned a lot about listening to your journey. But what would you say of everything, if you had to pare it down to one single thing at the end of the day, what is the number one biggest win with going with and implementing this model for your practice and your life?
I think the shift in mindset that happened before I opened the practice, and again, that was really thanks to so much of the coaching that we had from you, just understanding value, and realizing that we had so much value in what we were doing that we weren't charging people for. And so when I went into practice, I had my mind firmly wrapped around what the value was that I was creating for people. And the Life by Design systems, they fit all of that so well. So I think the biggest win has been implementing those systems in a way that every single person in my practice pays full price. I have two prices in my office. It's, a single person. If you're a single person, you pay this price. And if you're a family member where you've got other family members getting adjusted, then there's a family member price. But the family member price, this is my rock bottom price. I will never go below ever. And then the single person price is kind of an added bonus. So seeing that every single person in my practice pays full price, my conversion rate is really good. People, if they come under corrective care, they stay. And they're, I've got lots of people who are in optimization now. So I think that's been the biggest win, is implementing the system and then watching it work.
Right.
Seeing that, all these things that we learn, they really do work when you put the time in and you train yourself and you do them well. And I think I've never had more fun in practice than I've had this last year. And a part of it is just doing something that I think, I feel like I'm providing a great service in the community and being able to really believe that the premium that I'm offering, it's there. People are getting better. They love it. It's so different than anything in our community. So that's been fun. But I'll tell you, Jamie, it's a lot more fun too when you're making money. It just is.
I can't disagree with you there. And guys, I'll put Shawna's information in the show notes because, I know a lot of you men and women probably resonated with a lot of the things Shawna said today, whether it's her journey, her business model, and she does do some one-on-one coaching. So be valuable to reach out to her and chat with her, whether it be through Facebook or Instagram. I'll put her email in there as well. And just so you know, I did not pay Shawna for any of the nice things that she said about Life by Design today, but we are very grateful to have Shawna and Craig on the show, and also just a part of our Elite Doctor program. So you can go to the show notes, guys, Life by Design for Chiropractors .com/podcast, find today's episode, and everything will be in there. And thank you, as always, for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.